Welcome everyone to the RET Experience, Activities for the High School Classroom. Today is March 28th, 2014. This webinar is brought to you by the NEC Network, established at the Penn State College of Engineering and funded in part by a grant from the National Science Foundation. We gratefully acknowledge that support. And this webinar is hosted by Maytech Networks here at the Maricopa Community Colleges in Phoenix, Arizona, and we acknowledge our support from the National Science Foundation as well. With us here today in our offices are our presenters. Teresa Birch, she's a physics and integrated science teacher at Ironwood High School. And also joining us today, Trevor Thornton. Dr. Thornton is the director of the Center for Solid State Electronics here in our area at Arizona State University, Tempe. Teresa, thanks very much for joining us today. Activate your talk button, and I'd like to ask you a question. How did you get interested in this stuff? How did you become a physics and integrated science teacher? What brought you to that point?
Well, actually, it's kind of a weird story. I have always wanted to be a teacher all my life when I was a little kid. You know, I always made my little sister and little cousins sit down and I would be the teacher, so I was always very much into teaching and I really loved education. And when it came time for me to choose a career, which was later in my life, at the time there was not a teaching shortage, so I went into my counselor and asked if I want to go into teaching, what would I be sure to get a job in? And they said, well, math or science. So I said, well, physics is math with science, right? So, and she said, yeah, that would be great. And I said, okay, put me down for that. And the problem was I had never taken a physics class at the time, but as soon as I did, I loved it, and the rest is history. I just have been teaching physics. Now this is my 14th year.
Thanks, Teresa. That was interesting. I liked your comment. Well, put me down for that. That sounded like a great way of doing this. Dr. Thornton, Trevor, how about you? Same question for you. What led you to get started in, well, now you're solid state electronics, but what sort of brought you to this point today, briefly?
Well, good morning, good afternoon. I've been doing physics. I guess it was a thing that I fell in love with at middle school and high school back in the UK, and it was one of the subjects that always interested me most. I've got a terrible memory, so the thing I like about physics is you just have to understand a few basic principles, and then you can apply that to everything. You don't have to remember it all the time. So, yeah, I've been doing this now for 30+ years, so still get a kick out of it.
That's cool. I mean, as long as it's fun, right? And we've enjoyed the interaction with your group as well in the whole area of nanotechnology and so on. Let's go ahead today. Teresa, I'm going to advance to the next slide, but now the controls will be yours as you describe your RET experience. So now the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. As I said, I'm Teresa Birch, and the reason I'm here is because I did an RET, or research experience for teachers this last summer in 2013. My teacher friend Cheryl DeLay from Glendale Community College told me about it. The research experience for teachers is an NNIN program, and the NNIN is the National Nanotechnology Infrastructure Network. And I'm grateful to them for this opportunity, and if you need more or want to check them out, you can get more information on NNIN at www.nnin.org. So I'm going to talk about my research experience first. Before my research experience, everything I knew about nanotechnology was from articles I'd read, and I had a very pie-in-the-sky understanding of it. I was very interested in it. My enthusiasm for it spread to my students because I'd shared so many long-term possibilities. And one of my students, Keaton Carlson, decided to research the subject for a video project he was doing for his media class. And when he did that, he found out that there was still a lot of progress to be made in nanotechnology, but there were also amazing things happening in the NanoFab at ASU in the Engineering Research Center. So looking back at this video, although I love it because it's so well made, and you can see that I did not really have a handle on the state of nanotechnology at the present time. But fortunately, Art Handigan, who's also in the video, he works at the Fab, and he has a much more realistic and well-grounded perspective, which will be obvious when you watch this video. So if we can show that video now, you'll see what I mean.
You know, folks, as this video comes up, you'll hear it play locally on your machine. You may have to press the play button. Thank you. Just hold on a minute.
Okay, so if we can go back to the slides, could we do that? Great. I just wanted to go over a little bit about how I'm connected to the program that I did over the summer. My main employment is I teach freshman science and dual enrollment physics through Glendale Community College at Ironwood High School, which is in the Peoria Unified School District, actually in Glendale, Arizona. The dual enrollment physics I teach, it's really a regular, like a Physics 101 class, and the students have the option to take it for dual enrollment, although I don't teach it any differently. If they're taking it for credit or if they're taking it just as a regular high school credit, I teach the class the same way for everybody. So these are not necessarily the accelerated students at the school. There are accelerated students in my class, but there's a lot of regular kids in there. And that's really my favorite class to teach, and it's my favorite group of students to teach. I also teach adjunct sections at Glendale Community College, which is near to my high school. At Ironwood High School, we do an outreach to our feeder elementary school, Heritage Elementary School, to recruit them for our engineering academy, which we are in our first year of that. I'm working together with the engineering teacher, Mark Adams, and what we're trying to do is put together a 4-year experience in this engineering academy where students take engineering classes all 4 years of high school, and their science and math classes are integrated with those engineering classes. And the engineering academy itself, the engineering classes offer dual enrollment, the first 2 years community college credit, and this last 2 years university credit, in addition to the community college credit that they get for my physics class. So I'm involved with mostly high school students, but also down to the elementary and up to the university level. Now, as a teacher, you want to make your classes more fun and engaging, but it can't be just fun and games. There has to be learning aligned to the standards and objectives. Nanotechnology, unfortunately, is not in itself in our standards, but 21st century skills are. You know, we're always being told to introduce those to the students whenever we can. I've always been attracted to these high interest, amazing activities like magic sand, which is sand that you can pour into a glass of water and it will not get wet, and it is truly just amazing. And Diet Coke and Mentos candy, when you put those together, you get this huge fountain. And that's been studied by the Mythbusters on TV, and the kids love that. But you can't do these kind of things without a close connection to the standards. And without a close connection to the standards, I couldn't rationalize the time spent on these activities. So in the past, I had not done them. But when I was developing curriculum as part of my RET, I was able to rewrite these classic activities within the confines of 21st century skills. And now I can justify the time spent as part of not only measurement and nanotechnology units, but also career skills investigation. So when I reflected on the skills I needed to complete my research experience, it occurred to me that these skills would be very challenging for my high school students. My regular students, with all the access to information students have today, they're rarely required to engage in authentic research and critical thinking and problem solving. You know, from time to time, but not as a regular, ongoing habit. So generally, research in high school is about looking up what other people have found and then forming an opinion or conclusion about who is right. And I decided I would share my research experience with them. But I knew that they could not relate to a person my age as a college student. So after I left the Engineering Research Center at ASU, at the end of the summer, a graduate student named Ava Pettinato began working in the same capacity that I was. So we arranged for her to present the necessary skills to my students as part of her research project. So I followed her through her program and chronicled her experiences in videos. I had originally thought I would do it with Skype, but then I thought that the problems with scheduling and also being able to archive it on the website would be difficult, so we decided just to do hard videos. I showed the videos to my high school students, and I guided them through the main points of 21st century skills as they reacted to her instead of me. We made a series of videos with worksheets that were aligned to them that featured Ava in interviews, and the worksheets asked the students to analyze what she said and did and draw their own conclusions about her experiences. And in the picture, this is not Ava Pettinato, but it's another student that was there that summer in the clean room. Okay, so now we can actually look at the standards that I'm talking about here, the standards for the 21st century learner. When I first got to the Engineering Research Center, all I knew was that I was going to work with a professor who was researching improving the efficiency of solar cells. I was really happy about that because I'm very interested in solar energy. I literally just got solar panels put on the roof of my house. I'm waiting for them to turn the system on. But also renewable energy sources are a standard for my freshman class, and I also teach energy and physics. So it fit the curriculum that I wanted to write as well. When I got there, I knew how solar cells worked, but I did not know the technical side of fabricating them. I spoke with Professor Holman, and he told me a lot about it. And he gave me a big book to read and showed me this really great website with literally hundreds of tutorials about photovoltaics and that sort of thing. And I studied for hours, not knowing exactly what I needed to learn, but it was all very interesting to me, and I did learn a lot. And of course, when Ava started her program, she went through pretty much the same phase. So the next video that we're about to show here is Ava describing her research experience. So if we could show that video.
Let's take us back to the slide presentation.
Okay, so you can see that Ava is quite a bit younger than I. When my students look at her, they
and turn on your talk button, please, Teresa.
Turn it on?
Can you hear us, Mike?
Thank you.
It is on.
Thank you, Shashti. We're good.
Okay. All right, so you can see that Ava's a little closer to the age of my students, and I thought that what she had to say would be better taken from her. But still, a lot of my students still refer to her as that lady. So I think I made the right choice about not doing it myself. That's a new slide. Am I supposed to pause for questions?
Yeah, let's pause. Teresa, let's pause for questions for a moment. We do have a couple questions, and people they're already wondering what how does one get involved in this RET activity? I mean, how did you apply for it, and how do you apply for it, and does it pay anything? Those are the two questions we have so far.
Yes, I found out about it through a teacher that I work with at Glendale Community College, but as far as the actual process for applying, I will let Trevor go ahead and answer those questions.
Sure. The RET program that's run by the NNIN is actually managed by folks at Penn State. No, excuse me, not Penn State, at Georgia Tech. So Nancy Healy is the professor who manages it there. If you go to the www.nnin.org website, you can find links to the RET program. So if you're in the vicinity of one of the NNIN schools, there's 14 of them, you can apply to the RET program through the NNIN. But of course, the NSF manages RET experiences through other institutions, and so Googling RET or Research Experience for Teachers will provide you with a number of links. Yes, the program that we have, and probably the others, does pay a stipend for the summer. So for us, it's a 7-week program. There's a stipend. There's also some funds for classroom materials. The expectation is that we work with the high school and community college faculty who come to ASU to develop classroom materials and curriculum, and we can support some reasonable amount of classroom materials. So was there any other questions, Mike?
Teresa, is it hard to commit that 7 weeks of time? That's a fairly big time commitment.
Yeah, it is, because it is the whole summer. It certainly helps that you get paid for it. Because if it had not been a paid position, I have to tell you, I would not have been able to do it.
Sure.
I need to supplement my income during the summer. I usually do all my workshops in the summer. I take classes in the summer. But since it was paid, you know, that helped. That helped a lot, and I was able to do it. But, you know, most of us teachers, we wait for the summer to do everything.
Right.
We usually pack it full of more than we possibly
Right.
can do.
Well, thanks. You know what, Teresa, I think we'll go ahead. I'm going to advance to the next slide here. We're going to come back for more questions about the program and about your own experience as we get a little further in. So there you go. You're on standard 2 now.
Okay, great. The next thing that happened in my research experience is Dr. Holman told me to get trained on the NanoFab tools and to make a photo mask. And I said, okay, but truly I had no idea how I was going to do this. I had to find out on my own. And this is also a skill that my students also need to learn. It's rare in high school that students are left to figure out how things work. And mostly in the interest of time. I mean, we'd like to do it, but in the interest of time, we tend to give them detailed instructions and tutorials, you know, go here, look at this. But what I'm doing, and I see that there's a question here, what kind of connections are made that last beyond the summer? Well, I'm here. That's one of them. And also, the curriculum that I wrote, I'm using myself. And so now, lately, in the first phase of my labs, I make writing a procedure for using the equipment part of the lab. I make the kids do it. I don't write them a procedure. I make them figure it out. I check it over. If there's a big problem with it, you know, I discuss it with them before I let them use it. But it has definitely aided me in my teaching, and I'm actually teaching the kids the 21st century skills that I thought I didn't have time for before, but I'm able to, because I'm more familiar with them, I'm able to squeeze them in here and there, not make a separate unit out of it, but just my own experience helps me to insert it, you know, whenever there's an opportunity. So anyway, I had to go ahead and figure out how to do these things that Dr. Holman had asked me to do, and Ava had to figure this out too. So here's her interview about it, if we can show this video now. Okay, so if we can go back to our slides. Great, thanks. This standard 2, this was about drawing conclusions, making informed decisions, applying knowledge to new situations, and creating new knowledge. And for my students, this is not necessarily things that come naturally to them as far as making your own knowledge, finding out your own knowledge, getting it before you're in the situation where you need it. So now, are we on slide 7 now? Standard number 3, sharing knowledge, participating ethically and productively as members of our democratic society. The trainings that we did had to be scheduled after passing a safety test on NanoFab procedures, so we had to study up for that. It took a while to make reservations to get trained on every tool that I needed. You don't just walk in and get a training anytime you want. The tools were complicated to use, and you had to log everything you did on the log books next to each tool so that the people who maintain the tools know what happened, so that the next person to come in to use the tool knew what happened. They would have to check to make sure that all the settings were proper. And it's really scary to think when you're using the tool after a short training that you might do something wrong and cause the tool to go down and need to be repaired, in which case the next person who's booked time on it can't use it, and of course it's going to cost somebody money to fix that. It's a little nerve-wracking, but it was also really interesting. After the trainings, you had to book time on each tool in order to use it and finish your project in that time frame for the time that you booked. You have to leave the tool in good order for the next person so that they don't waste a lot of time setting it up before they can use it. And all the time you book in the NanoFab gets billed to your program. So you want to be careful, not to use more time than you need. High school students, this is usually not the case. They usually have these things decided for them. They get told how much time they're going to have. If they break something, it doesn't cost them anything, unless they're wildly careless. But for the most part, we just get a new one. So they really need to learn these skills. So I have a video here. This is about the training. This shows Ava being trained on one of the tools, and you can see that there's a lot going on there if you want to show this video now. Okay, if we can go back to slides. Now that was 47 seconds of training that she received there, and you can see Carrie Sinclair, who was training her, gave her a lot of information. The trainings generally go for an hour. So there's a lot that goes on in those trainings, and you learn some terrific skills. Okay, so the next standard for 21st century skills is standard number 4, pursue personal and aesthetic growth. And I feel that high school students feel like this is the main reason they're going to college, to pursue their personal research and aesthetic growth. And I think they're surprised to find out that they have to do that in the confines of somebody else's growth in the beginning while they're learning their skills and more or less pay their dues. My students are used to investigations that they can finish in 90 minutes which is how long a class is at my high school, and then they make their conclusions, and that's that. But when you're part of an ongoing research team, you may never see the conclusion of your research, definitely not before you graduate. For this and other reasons, students may want to choose projects that are going to teach them skills that they will use later in their careers as they pursue their own personal growth. Here is a video of Dr. Zach Holman, who is the professor that I was working with, describing his work and giving his expected timeline for seeing any fruit from his research. And here's the video for Dr. Holman. Okay, if we could see the slides, please, Mike. I see a question here that goes back, is that the ASU NanoFab? Yes, that was one very small part of the ASU NanoFab. That was a lithography machine, a photolithography machine. And the lighting is yellow because that was in the lithography portion of the NanoFab. That was one small part of it. It's pretty extensive, and it's really an awesome, awesome place. So what we have here in this picture is an example of my work in the NanoFab. Dr. Holman gave me a recipe, which is what we call a set of instructions for creating a test cell. So I went into the clean room and I followed the recipe with the help of Carrie Sinclair, who trained me on the lithography tools. And it was all going very well until the end. We're removing the excess metal in the sonicator. The sonicator uses sound waves to clean up the metallization on the wafers. And when we did that, just large patches of the metallization we had applied lifted up and floated away. And I think I can show you that. No, I can't. But you can see these giant pieces. Yeah, it's not. Oh, this one here. Oh, no, this one. Yeah, this is it. Okay, right here. These areas that don't look so good. That's it. So anyway, they just floated away, and Carrie took one look at that, and she said, "Oh, that's because we didn't apply an adhesion layer to help bond the metal to the wafer." So we're like, "Oh, that's good to know." So I took my wafer and I showed it to Dr. Holman, and he looked at it, and we agreed that the pattern of the metallization that's on there, that looks like those fingers there, was nice and sharp, like we had hoped. And he just said, well, we should just try it again, and this time use an adhesion layer. And I was really happy to hear that he didn't have a problem with this, because this is exactly what I tell my high school students, is that science isn't getting the right answer the first time and then, you know, writing a report and giving a press conference. It's about trying, failing, trying again, looking at your results, trying to make them better, you know, an ongoing process. So rarely, though, do my high school students get a chance to, you know, get a second chance at a lab. Just because mainly we don't usually have time. We'll just kind of, you know, move on from there. but since taking this, doing this program over the summer, one of the other things I'm trying to do is to build this kind of phase into my students' projects, you know, redo it. And I'm actually asking them to do it on their own time, which, as we all know, in real life is something that you are frequently asked to do. So, you know, in conclusion, I just want to say that I thoroughly enjoyed my research experience. It gave me a first-hand look at how research is done. I learned a lot of things. I learned a lot about things that I already thought I knew about. I got much more in-depth, and it gave me more confidence in front of my students because I'd be speaking to them from experience and from experience in current skills. Not my experience from way back when I went to college, but something that I did cutting edge just last summer. And it really updated my own skill set. And I'd recommend this program to anyone looking for a professional development experience, anybody who wants to update their skills or to learn more about nanotechnology for their students, because it's certainly going to come up in their future careers. Trevor, did you want to say anything before we go?
No, I think this might be a good time to stop for some questions. I can see quite a few of them appearing in the chat room.
Okay.
Teresa, let's look at this first one. Have you developed any labs or activities to do in your own classroom that maybe simulate some of the things? You mentioned magic sand, but what about some of these like lithography stuff that you've done? Have you had an opportunity to think about activities that might simulate those things?
I have definitely been thinking about that. I did a few for my, I'm hoping to go back this summer. For my first summer, what I did was I basically rewrote a few classic activities because those were the ones I really wanted to do. I had never been able to fit them in before. So I did magic sand, I did Mentos and Diet Coke, and I also did an activity with ferrofluid, which is fascinating. And I rewrote them inside the confines of 21st century skills. And those will all be archived. Trevor, you want to tell them exactly where all the stuff that I did this summer will be archived?
Yes. So again, the Georgia Tech group take all the classroom materials, all the curriculum, and it's available from the NNIN education portal. Again, that website, if you look there, you'll find all the previous classroom materials that have been developed through this RET program.
And there is a lot of stuff there for teachers. If you go there you can go all the way up to college level stuff, down to elementary school activities, and once you start looking there, you're definitely going to want to do some of these activities because they're so much fun. So I did rewrite those, and so I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. But this summer, if I do it again, I'm going to I'll probably do at what you mentioned, lithography, definitely lithography, because I think there's a wide. It's a skill that kids are really likely to use. Now, for my ferrofluid activity, I did it in the form of the students having to write a proposal. I did a quick activity with ferrofluid. We researched it. I showed a lot of YouTube videos that are fascinating. You can do that all day if you look up YouTube videos on ferrofluid. But ferrofluid's really expensive. So I told the kids, we can do a ferrofluid investigation, but you'll have to research it and you'll have to write it and you'll have to put it in the form of a proposal to me, because if you want to touch my very expensive ferrofluid, I'm going to have to accept your very well done proposal. And I thought that was very motivating because everyone wants to play with ferrofluid. Is there another question you want me to do specifically?
Yes, I like that comment. If you're going to touch my very expensive ferrofluid. Hey, you know, Teresa and Trevor, while we were chatting here, I jumped onto that link that's slightly up in the chat window, education and training. There's some pretty cool things there. There's nanotechnology curriculum materials, a searchable database of over 50 lessons, a thing about the RET, of course, guide to nanotechnology demonstrations. Well, that's pretty pretty interesting. A lot of things there, Trevor. You're right. Trevor, I have an important question for you. Teresa mentioned that some of this equipment can be expensive. Did she ever break anything that you know of?
Absolutely
Okay.
not. No, there were never any problems in the machine room.
At least I do know.
I actually have a funny
go
story
ahead, go
about that Trevor probably
Okay, I
doesn't
want to
know.
hear this one for sure. Go ahead.
Well, I didn't break anything, but when I went in to make my test wafer, I was all alone when I was doing the deposition on a very expensive machine, and halfway through, the best way I can describe it is I had a little panic attack, and I thought I was doing it wrong, and it occurred to me that I might have ruined somebody else's project. I thought somebody else's project was in there, and I hit a button that ruined it. And I just, I didn't know what to do. And what I did is I got in touch with the person who had trained me. There's a phone in the NanoFab for emergencies, so you don't have to get all de-gowned and everything when you go out. And I got in touch with John, and John laughed at me. He said, "No, you're doing it right. Go back to the machine and continue." But I was so nervous and upset because I thought I had done something wrong.
That's a good story. He said just basically get a hold of yourself and keep going.
Yeah.
I have a question for Trevor. Trevor, as you see applications come in, what is the basis for selection? I mean, what are you looking for in a teacher that applies to this program? I think they apply from all over the country, don't they? What are you looking for?
Yes, we have a fairly straightforward, simple application form, and we ask the applicants to explain why they're interested in the program, and we're just really looking for enthusiasm and ideas about how they would incorporate what they learn at ASU and the other sites into their classroom. So I think enthusiasm is one of the main things we're looking for.
Would you guess, I mean, do you receive 10 applications for 5 that you can accept? Is there a figure of merit there? I'm just trying to think of what are the possibilities for people to get involved here.
That's a good question. We have, I think the funding allows us to bring in 5 faculty to ASU, and my guess is we get 20-odd applications. So
that's pretty good. Pretty good that you made it in, Teresa.
Yeah, I was so excited when I found out I was accepted, because I really didn't think that they would want someone for me. I was thinking that they wanted someone to write curriculum to start a nanotechnology class at the community college level. But I think probably what I'm doing is helpful to that. Well, first of all, our engineering academy, I'm hoping somewhere down the line that I will be able to do a nanotechnology class, or certainly an advanced physics class where nanotechnology will be an entire unit. But in high school, what do we do? We get kids interested in it, so when they get to community college, they're going to be asking for a nanotechnology class. It's certainly something, it's going to be one of the careers of the future, and so nobody's going to create a class for if nobody wants it. So if the kids get interested in nanotechnology early on, when they get to community college and the university, they're going to be, where's my nanotechnology classes? I want to know more about nanotechnology, and I want to continue with that. So yeah, I was very excited to get in, and once I started working on it, I was very excited to be there.
That's cool. You know, one of the participants sent me a link on the slide. He said that he participated in the Pathways to Science program at the University of Chicago. And their stipend was $8,000 for 7 weeks, and that really made it possible for him to be part of that. So I think that's good that there actually is the funding there to make these sort of things happen. I think that number might vary a bit depending on the location and things across the country, but as you said, it really made it possible for you to have it happen. One other question.
I don't mean to interrupt,
yeah.
But I do want to comment on that point. Teachers are asked to do so much on their own time. Their own professional development frequently is not paid for by their districts, and I speak from the high school level. So to be involved in something like this was very exciting, and I am the envy of my friends who teach at the high school. It's like, how did you get that? And I said, because I didn't give up and I applied for a lot of things. I'm so grateful for an experience and an opportunity like this.
I've just got one more final question in case some other ones come in. Trevor, when a person like Teresa comes in, how do you assign projects, or is it sort of a mutual interest thing? Do you say, here's the possibilities, or do you make a definitive assignment depending on what capacity you have within your research group at the time? How does a project decide upon?
So we're lucky at ASU we have a very large faculty in engineering who cover lots of different disciplines. So after we accept the people who applied, it's really a sort of email discussion before they come on campus as to what things they're interested in. And then, for example, based on Teresa's interests in renewable energies, I talked to some of the solar power people at ASU, and Zach Holman was very enthusiastic to have Teresa join his group. So it's really a sort of ongoing discussion that takes place before the faculty come onto the ASU campus.
That's good. Teresa, by the way, I want to come out and see your solar panels on your house.
You are welcome. As a matter of fact, I grabbed some of the engineering kids when they were installing them, and we did a field trip to my house, and we watched them being installed.
That's cool. Okay, we're coming now to our final sort of thoughts here for today, but let me do one thing before we get into that question. I'm going to ask the folks online to help us, right? We're supported by the National Science Foundation, and we're going to now launch a survey. You'll see it pop right up in your window. So please take 60 to 90 seconds as we're concluding here to click on those buttons and tell us what you think about that. We want to improve this webinar series, and we're interested in your ideas. I always joke and I say this helps us pay the bills. What it really does is it demonstrates our impact to the National Science Foundation. So thank you for being part of that. Teresa, if you had to say, you're talking to a fellow teacher who's uncertain about the RET. I mean, she was going to go to the mountains for the summer, and she's now got to think about giving up that time. Is it really worth it? What would you say to them to convince them to do the 7-week experience?
Oh, it's absolutely worth the time. You go in and you're kind of back in the situation where you're a student again. I mean, you can certainly see what it's like to be a student again. You're thrown into something that you may know a little bit about, but not everything. You're learning new stuff, which is so important because you have to remember what it's like not to know things when you're teaching your students. And I think if we don't continue with our professional development and we forget what it's like not to know, we start looking at our students like, come on, why aren't you getting this? And it's really refreshing to be back in that position. I made a lot of great contacts. I met so many wonderful people. And I did want to mention that after the RET, everybody who had been doing it all over the country, Santa Barbara, Georgia, I don't want to leave anybody out.
Minnesota, yes, there's a few sites around the country.
Yeah, we all got together and talked about our experience. So now I'm in touch with people from all over who did the same thing I did. Some great connections, some great ideas. They're looking at my work. I'm looking at their work. I don't think there's been a day that has gone by since last summer, and now we're toward the end of the school year, that I haven't used something, talked to someone, used a resource that I got during my RET program.
That's a great comment. Especially I liked your idea of remembering what it was like to not know something and to learn again. That was a great comment. Trevor, think about it now from your side, right? You have a large research group. It takes time, commitment to work with these teachers coming in, but yet there must be the positive side as well. You've made a large commitment from your side to these teachers. Why does that make sense for you? What does your research group gain?
Well, one of the things we need to do at the universities is to reach out to the wider community, and working with the teachers is a very powerful way to leverage that, because if we can get a teacher excited in the research that's going on at ASU, then they in turn can go and get all of their students excited. So it's a very powerful tool to get the message out to the wider community what we're doing on campus. And then to address one of the other questions, the teachers have, it's up to them after the RET is finished how they want to work with the faculty members. So Teresa's continued to work with Zach. We have another teacher, Dixie Coleman from Central Arizona Community College. She's a regular visitor now at ASU. She works with Jennifer Blaine Kristen, one of our electrical engineering professors, and Dixie brings biology experience to Jennifer's group, and they work with the students as a team. And so you can build ongoing and lasting relationships between our faculty at the university and the faculty at the high schools and community colleges.
Well, that's just a great, I think a great comment to building a community that involves education at all these different levels. That can only help students in the end. So thank you both very much. Folks, we're getting ready. I'm going to count down from 5, and hopefully you've hit submit on your survey buttons and you're rapidly typing in those last couple of words. So let's go ahead and close the survey in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, it's closing now. Thank you. Let me take us forward to our final things. You will be able to access this recording slides in the handout either by going to the Nano4Me website that you see here that features the webinars, and if you registered for this webinar, which you did, on Monday you'll get a notice of all these links. Now, one other aspect, often folks would like a certificate of participation in this webinar. It's only an hour today, but often they're an hour and a half. And if you write to Sue Barger, S-B-A-R-G-E-R, at E-N-G-E-R, at Penn State, that's psu.edu, she'll be happy to send that to you. Now, coming up is some important things happening in the nanotechnology world very soon, April 7th through 10, a workshop on nanotechnology course resources, and another webinar in April, Industry Partners for Your Nano Program, followed by a May workshop, Hands-on Introduction to Nanotechnology, and our final webinar of the series on May 15th on a technical topic called electrospinning. Now, you can find out a lot more about these workshops. They have good support for you to attend them by visiting the Nano4Me website. I would like to thank, first of all, our presenters, Teresa and Trevor. Thank you again for being part of this. We just loved hearing about that experience and what it meant to both of you. And for you participants online, thank you for attending the NAC Network webinar titled RET Experience, Activities for the High School Classroom. Teresa, I'd like to suggest that you turn off your talk button now as the webinar ends. Folks, this officially ends our webinar for today. Thank you.